The vision of an organization, the vision of you as an individual, you have to question yourself always, is it good for all concerned? Because your vision impacts others. Is it good for the others? Like, for instance, a company, you have to ask yourself, and I agonized on that before I started Ritz Carlton, when I decided I will create the finest hotel company in the world, I agonized and said, is this good for everybody? And question, who is everybody? Well, number one, the investors. If it's not good for them, you won't have a business. I mean, it had to be good for them. Number two, the guest. It had to be good for them. I didn't just say yes. I listed as to why it would be good for each part. The employees, it had to be good for them. Society as a whole, it had to be good for them. Now it is a vision that really counts.
Today, I am so excited to present to you a true gentleman. And I really wish more leaders exemplify the leadership excellence that today's guest personifies. He is the founder and former president, are you ready for this, of the Ritz Carlton Hotel Company. And I don't know if you've ever had the pleasure of staying at a Ritz Carlton, but I have. And I will tell you that this man absolutely walks the talk in his own leadership style and the leadership that he allows to emanate from every single person on his team, from the bellman that greets you to the person that sees you up to your room. So without further ado, it is my pleasure to introduce you to Horst Schulze. Thank you so much for coming on today. I'm so excited to have you here.
Well, I'm delighted to be with you.
All right. So I want to ask you a question about what separated you from every other leader on the planet, because in your book, Excellent Wins, and if anybody's read anything about you, and I know, don't go Googling him now, wait till after the interview, but Horst is a leader that truly, as I said, walks the talk. So other companies talk about vision, other companies talk about, excellence, other companies talk about putting the customer first. What is it about you in your soul that differentiates you from really the rest of the pack? Because the Ritz Carlton is in a class of its own.
Well, I want to make a slight correction. You said I'm the founder. I'm the co-founder. There were others involved.
Oh. See, such a gentleman. Well, there you go.
Well, I was running the operation, but I was not an investor. There were investors, developers who started a new company, and they found me to run that company, to manage it, because they were not hotel people. They were investors and developers.
Right.
So I joined as a co-founder. I was there. They had a hotel in construction. And when I came in, actually I accepted the job late 82. We opened our first hotel in January 84. So I was there for a little bit over a year while the hotel was in construction, the first one and then the second one and so on. So, and then I ran that company, which when I joined didn't have a name. It ended up to be Ritz Carlton and so on. So I ran the company.
Horst, can you tell us how that name came to be?
Well, yeah, in fact, I recommended the developers that we should buy an existing hotel that already have a registered name. That would be easier. And I recommended, in fact, the Mark Hopkins in San Francisco. And sure enough, we made an offer. But unfortunately, the last day of the offer, Intercontinental exercised their right of first refusal, and they bought the hotel. And we had already hired architects and everything, interior designer. When our owners came back, well, but we can buy the Ritz Carlton in Boston, which has a name. And I said, and we all said, including my marketing guy, no, that is a dilapidated hotel. We don't want that name. So I wasn't that smart, believe me. But our owner said, well, it doesn't matter. We have a real good deal buying that. It's a good location. after we buy it, we will close it and renovate it to bring it up to date, because it was a terrible place at the time. So they bought it, sure enough, they closed it. 4 months later, we adopted the name because it was registered. It's difficult to register a name worldwide.
Sure.
It was registered name, and that's really a big reason. And the location was great, frankly. The hotel was not. But
this is in San Francisco. This was in San Francisco?
No. This was now in Boston.
In Boston, right.
Remember, we couldn't get the one in San Francisco.
San Francisco, right.
We couldn't get that. We wanted it. We all wanted it, but we couldn't get it. But so instead, the owner came with this hotel, which none of us wanted in Boston. But he said, well, it's a good location. The name is registered. Sure enough, he bought it. We closed it. But 4 months, and we adopted the name. And 4 months later, we opened our first hotel, the first operating hotel in Atlanta. And that's the rest is history.
So you were able, within those 4 months of when it was closed, you began to put your imprint on the hotel, on the brand.
Well, sure. I was there already for a year. Sure. Already the philosophy didn't change. Just the name was adopted. We didn't have a name.
Okay. So Horst, I am so curious to know what it is about your background. I don't know if it's your family, your parents, your little town in Germany. What was it about you or where you're from that made you into such an excellent leader?
Well, let's face it, we all are the result of inputs that we had through our lives. And I was quite fortunate to have exceptional people input to me. Mind you, my parents were lower middle class, but very honorable people, hardworking, honorable, truthful. I mean,
character. They had character.
Character. I done, mind you, I dropped out of elementary school when I was 14 and went to work because I was dreaming about it, to work in a hotel. And that hotel, my parents found a job there, but unfortunately it was 100 kilometers away from my village. And so I lived in a dorm room in that hotel working as a busboy, which meant at the time you did everything, wash dishes and so on. So my parents, and I stayed there very homesick, but my mother wrote me a letter every single day. If I didn't have a letter today, I had two tomorrow. I guarantee it.
So Horst, let me interrupt you. For the younger folks listening, this was pre-internet, pre-email, pre-text, so it was old school pen and paper. But I do have to ask you a question I'm quite curious about. Why were you chomping at the bit to work in a hotel?
Yeah, well, I wish I knew.
Really?
I must have read something. I don't know. I begged and cried. In fact, my grandfather was totally embarrassed. That's not a profession, and so on. But my parents finally gave in, looked, what is the best hotel in the region, therefore that particular hotel. And so that's the input of my parents. But when I got there, the maitre d', the head waiter of the hotel, whom I was working for, talked to me the first day and impacted me dramatically the first day by two sentences. And he said, number one, he said, so tomorrow, show up at 7 a.m. If I meant 1 minute after 7, I would tell you so.
Very German.
But he established clearly we have discipline, we have rules here, we have we're a disciplined organization. He established that once. Now, not that I got that at the time, I knew, but he established it in me nevertheless. And then he said something which went totally over my head at the time. He said, and don't come to work. Come here to create excellence in what you're doing. Well,
I love that. I read that.
What's he talking about? Excellence. I have to wash dishes. I have to clean floors. What's he talking about? Well, after a while, I learned what he's talking about. He was a gentleman, simply, and totally impacted me, that you don't do anything at all in life without high intent. You don't just do things. The chair is just doing a thing. We are human beings. We have higher intent in all that we do. That was his teaching. Now, having the luck of having a human being like that, who was truly a gentleman of excellence, and nothing of the like I ever met. I met some other exceptional people who did input into me. But this man, of course, I was particularly perceptive because I was 14, 15, 16 years old when I worked for him. So that, of course, forms you somehow. Not that I always lived by it as well as he did, but nevertheless, the input in me was such that you always have a higher intent. For example, starting Ritz Carlton, I didn't join that new hotel company to work. I enjoyed that company for a high intent to create the finest hotel company. That was I worked for Hyatt before that, and a great company, enjoyed it. But here was an opportunity to start my own company, and my intent was to create the best. Now, if you do that, and I want to warn everybody right here, and I see that people with vision and so on, but usually the visions are not really visions. But if you have
what are they?
Missions. They're missions.
Missions.
We do this.
So funny, because I work with companies creating mission vision statements, and they're all confused.
They're all confused, and when they have a vision, they don't ask them the vision of an organization, the vision of you as an individual. You have to question yourself always: is it good for all concerned? Because your vision impacts others. Is it good for the others? For instance, a company. You have to ask yourself, and I agonized on that before I started Ritz Carlton. When I decided I will create the finest hotel company in the world, I agonized and said, is this good for everybody? A question, who is everybody? Well, number one, the investors. It has to give, if it's not good for them, you won't have a business. I mean, it had to be good for them. Number two, the guest. It had to be good for them. And I didn't just say yes. I listed as to why it would be good for each part. The employees, it had to be good for them. Society as a whole, it had to be good for them. Now it is a vision that really counts. It cannot be a vision for you only of organization. It must.
So, Horst, I have to ask, because I'm sure you can tell me, what's the vision of the Ritz Carlton?
To become the finest hotel company in the world.
Mission accomplished.
To be known as the finest hotel company in the world. Now, in that moment, I was saying, would that be good for the investors? Would that be good for the guests? Would that be good for the employees? And would that be good for the society as a whole? You know, well, for example, the more difficult answer was, will it be good for society? Yes, because we will help setting new standards of excellence for society. So it would be good for all concerned. So that's and now you have a chance to truly lead once you know that. So that is now the destination. Nothing else is the destination anymore. And as the leader, consequently, because it is good for all concerned, you have no more right to compromise it. You have no more right. That's what you're leading. You cannot compromise, because you would be going against society, against the employees, against the guests, and against investors, which you have no right to do, even morally.
I was reading that's one of your famous statements, that when you become a leader, you give up your right to compromise. And it sounds to me like it's absolutely a consequence of the pride, taking pride in your work. I think that's what you were describing. Show up on time and be the best. Like, good enough isn't good enough, which just drives me crazy.
Well, you have to, you accepted the responsibility for the investors, for society, for the employees, and for the guests. You accepted that responsibility. So how can you possibly morally compromise this?
So tell me, Horst, I have to ask you this. I'm sure you never thought you'd go here, but I hope you'll answer this question. Why do you think so many leaders today, so many companies have lost that North Star of excellence, of not showing pride? And it starts at the top. They don't have a vision. It's all about greed. What do you think happened?
Well, it's the result of the society's rules. Look, what do they learn? What do they learn in business school? What do they learn? They learn basically the manipulation of money. That's basically what is learned. And how are they measured? How is a leader measured by Wall Street? By how well? That's all. They're not measured by how to create the profit. They're measured by the profit.
Bottom line.
So consequently, there will be compromises made in order to create a profit, because that's what measures. That's your measurement. That's what people judge you by. That's what everything. So they are slowly put in that corner of do anything for a profit. So it's not important how well the employees really feel. Well,
oh gosh, yeah.
And it's really not important if the product really is 100%. It's really as long as people buy it, and so if it's not 100%, I make it up by advertising a little bit more. So it sells anyway.
Well, you have inferior quality of the product, right?
Yeah, there is consequently the high intent is making money. While my argument is, if your high intent is excellence, on the end you will make more money by concentrating on that excellence. That's my argument.
But the problem with Wall Street, if the example you used, it's quarterly driven, and the greed is, and nobody, it's so upsetting to me that they might talk about caring about the people that work with them and for them, but they don't.
Come on, I listen. The truth. Look, we have to be honest. We have to look in a mirror. You have to say it. No matter how arrogant or rude it may be. I was, for instance, on the board of one company, and on several boards. We had a 3-year retreat. After 3 years, we had a retreat. I was there 3 years when we had a retreat, and we had a big book with various tabs. And the CEO said, "Let's look at the tabs. Is there anything else we should discuss?" So I looked at the tab, and I said, "Yeah, we should be discussing something else. 2 more things. We should discuss our customer, which we have never done in 3 years. Not once. And we should talk about employee, which we have never done in 3 years that I'm here.
Wow.
Never in 3 years on the board did we talk about employees and customers. Now, well, what do you expect? But of course, well, wait a minute. The CEO happened to write a book and said our most important asset is our employees. And in 3 years, he never even mentioned them.
Oh.
So it's a very sad situation but he is in the corner. He didn't learn in business school that the real thing is having employees that want to do the job. Work can be so beautiful. And that's what this method meant. It's a place of creating excellence for all concerned. It's a beautiful place. And when I think of, what is any business? And people say B2B, and so all these stupid statements. There's no such thing. There's one business who deals with another business, yes, but there is a human being in one business deals with a human being in the other business.
And it's all relation. Exactly.
So this beautiful thing that I now can you select people to join me, employees, not to work for me, but we don't think about it. What do? We hire employees. Why do we hire employees? To fulfill a function. Mm-hmm. Just like the chair in which you're sitting is fulfilling a function. But we're dealing with human beings. How about inviting them to join us?
Well, that's why I like when people call somebody a member of their team, because they have a different emotional investment than being an employee. And yet, clearly, the Ritz Carlton and your imprint is people, that's the expression. Maybe it's yours. If you take care of your employees, they will take care of your customers.
You mentioned a word already here, team. Mm-hmm. They all talk about team. If you start working the first day, we said, we're a team here. Now, what the heck is a team?
Yeah.
A team happens to be a group of people who have a common objective. What you mean in your company, the worker that is working on a loading dock, does he have the same objective that the company has?
Mm-hmm.
Because he doesn't even know the vision of the company.
Right.
So don't tell me that you're a team if not everybody is working for the same objective.
I 1,000% agree. Yeah.
Team works together for a common objective and helps each other toward that objective. The reason to come to work is not the function of the day, but is to accomplish that objective, which is good for all concerned.
Mm-hmm. Now, that sounds like such common sense. How did you operationalize that, right? Because common sense is the least common of senses. But if anybody walks into the Ritz Carlton, you are in a different place.
I would like to say something about Ritz Carlton. First of all, I left Ritz Carlton many years ago.
Mm-hmm.
I was running the company for the first 20 years or so, close to 20 years. Then, though, I formed another company, and which I sold a couple of years ago, which is now voted number one in the world.
The consulting group?
That's Capella.
Capella, the consulting group, right. Mm-hmm.
Capella, which is now rated number one hotel company in the world. Is there none in the US, only in Asia and Europe? So it didn't only work in Ritz Carlton, the philosophy. It worked in other places too.
Of course.
And it is just a philosophy. And then, of course, you said it. It's not enough to have that thought in the philosophy. You have to create processes to accomplish your philosophy.
Mm-hmm.
That is called management. I always make it very clear the difference between management and leadership is management creates systems, processes, and measurements and controls to be sure what the customer wants is happening. Leadership creates an environment where the employees want to do what the customer expects, want to do, not have to do. Management makes sure the employees does it, but leadership makes sure the employee wants to do it.
Mm-hmm.
There's a huge difference by making sure that everybody feels part of it. So the way we processed this, mind you, our Ritz Carltons and now Capella, anyway, in the case of Ritz Carlton, in 5 continents, each hotel was voted number one in their location.
Wow.
So it didn't matter if it was in China or in Africa. It didn't matter.
It's the process.
It's the processes we created to make sure it happened. And the process started with selecting, first of all, the right employees. Well,
and how did you do that? How did you do that? Because that's huge.
Yeah, that's huge. Well, we frankly used an outside company to help us. First of all, we went and determined the talent needed in each job category.
The skills, so the talent meaning the skill set.
The skill set for each job.
Right. That's the first thing, right?
First thing. And then we determined the behavioral attitude around each job and so on. So, and then with the outside company determined what questions it takes to determine if the employee has it.
Mm-hmm.
So we had a very careful process to selecting, not hiring people. But already in selection, we told the employees, don't join us. Don't work for us. Join our team.
So can you give an example? Can you give an example of that? Because you definitely need to hire for skill, and you're also hiring for character and integrity. So give an example of somebody that works the front desk, right? There's a certain skill set that you need for that. Then what's the really the magical piece, I think, the piece that makes the difference, right? Plenty of people can check people in, right?
Yeah.
But the other piece, what was that? How did that?
They had two, basically there were two things in the, now we looked at the technical ability to work with computers and all that stuff.
Sure. Mm-hmm.
And that can be taught.
That's easy. Yeah.
Yeah. We looked at two things: a welcoming spirit and what's the word? I'm sorry. And empathy.
Ah.
And empathy, because when guests had a need or an issue, they usually go to the front desk. Not even the concierge. They go to the front desk. Now the concierge also had to have empathy, but the front desk. For some reason, when people check in, check out, and all of a sudden they have somebody in front, they tell well, I would have really liked that. I'm looking, and when once they know that person, they come back in the lobby and go to that person. Gee, I don't really like to be on a high floor or whatever. Right. And they show empathy for their situation. And then, of course, and because of that, we also, now, in addition to that, in case they had a problem, the guest, we certified each employee in the company, mind you, each employee, for problem resolution. How then we, of course, in this now, but you asked me about selection. So we make select that they have empathy, and then, of course, we taught them how to react with the empathy. To, if they have an issue, where the guest has an issue, listen was the number one. 2, show empathy. 3, apologize if there's something wrong, no matter if it's yours or not. 4, make amends. So we certified and taught them around what we selected. We didn't just say, okay, they have it, now we'll leave it there. We said, now how can we teach them to really use this properly? So the selection was very, very precise. And I give it in my book, I give the example. What does it take, for instance, what does it take to be a doorman? Clearly, they had to be pretty intense, and they had to enjoy working outside, hot, cold, no matter what. So we learned, this is kind of really, I had a real laugh when I found out about it. So finally we looked, as we built this, okay, now that we have gone through this, we all like to ask them, what do you like? What do you like to do in your life? Well, the outdoor people like to gardening, field, forest. And it turned out, after we had hired a number of them, we said, let's look back how successful that is. And we looked at the 5 doormen were rated number 1 in the company, and we interviewed them very careful. What is common? What do they have in common? It's kind of funny. They all like gardening.
Interesting. Well, they're cultivating. They're starting to cultivate an experience.
They like to deal outside. Period. They were happy to be outside. They didn't want to sit somewhere inside. Imagine if you wouldn't know that. You potentially hire somebody as a doorman who really doesn't enjoy to be outside, wants to be inside. How ridiculous. So we made sure we knew the whole profile of a job and selected for that profile.
So you set people up to win, right? As opposed to setting them up to fail, right? That's great.
So there were 4 processes to be sure every employee, number 1, selection. Now we were already, I knew with that we were already ahead of the competition. The next thing was orientation. What happens usually the first day of work? Now, knowing from behavioral analyst that the first day of work is a significant emotional event. How I'm going to use this? And what happens usually? The new guys come to work, Bill, and the manager talks about team. We're a team here. But they don't tell them the objective. They just say we're a team. And then we turn that then we let this employee read the rules of the company. Here are the rules, the objective, here fill out a paper. That's all. And then we turn them over, build a new waiter. We turn them over to Fred, the waiter who is already there for 9 months. And we say, Bill, work with Fred, he knows the ropes. Suddenly you're in a rope business. And on the way to the kitchen, Fred, the old waiter, tells the new waiter, this company sucks. That's his orientation. Now, we didn't do the orientation in our new hotels. I did, no matter where. No matter where in the world, the new employee,
You mean you literally flew there and en masse, I take it, like you'd hire X amount of people.
And help training for the first 10, 15 days in each hotel that we either took over or opened new. And said, here's who we are. Don't work for us. Join us in our beautiful dream. And then, of course, let them know how that dream would be of value to them. If we will be known as the finest hotel in the world, will be known, you have opportunity in any other company, second to none, because you will be respected. You will be honored for it. You will have opportunity in our company because we will grow. You will make more money. We will have more guests. Everything beautiful lies in that vision. Beautiful. Join us to accomplish that. Don't come to work. Join us to accomplish.
Of course, I'm curious. What in all your hotels, is there a census of the number of years people stayed with you?
Okay, employees and so on. Oh, yeah, sure. Well, let me tell you, and the employee turnover at the time, I don't know what's today in America exactly, but I'm sure it's pretty well the same. The employee turnover in hotel restaurants at the time was 122% annually. 122%.
Wow.
In Ritz Carlton, we didn't pay more, mind you. In Ritz Carlton, the employee turnover was around 20%.
And that's attributed to?
They felt being part of the company.
You cared about them, yeah.
You know, they felt part. Look, even Aristotle already 3,000 years ago, and everybody since determined that the human being to be fulfilled needs purpose and belonging. We gave him a purpose. The purpose is to come in here and make the best in the world, and you belong by being part of that purpose. We gave him exactly what every human being needs, and consequently, they gave it back. You know, it's not that difficult. Human beings, we know that, need belonging and purpose. Yes. So why wouldn't we give it to them? Why wouldn't we give it to them? No.
Plenty don't.
which is doubly sad. You know, look at this beautiful picture. We hire people to be part of something, going toward a beautiful destination to be known as the best in the world, for the benefit of all concerned, the investors and everybody. This is beautiful. So we have a high intent in our work, not just functioning, but we are functioning for a high intent. Now, we have to make sure that all our actions have high intent. So in other words, you're not checking people in anymore in order to check them in. You're checking them in. That was the high intent there. So and so that when you're finished with the check-in, you have convinced them to want to come back and want to recommend us. We said every customer interaction, we must convince them that they want to come back and want to recommend us. That's a high intent. It's not just an interaction anymore. Now, then we learned how we do that. Well, we have to say, we know because of the we work with behavioral analysts, where we learned that a person makes a decision, and you make a decision about somebody when you meet him the first time, when they come within 10 feet. Wow, I didn't know that. I never heard about that. So subconsciously, you are making a decision about somebody when you come within 10 feet. You can't help it. Society tells you all kind of different lies, you know. But that's what you do subconsciously. But
so how do you use that?
Wait a second. More important, so they make a decision about you also.
Right. So what do you do with that? So what do you do with that information?
So we taught all employees, if a guest comes within 10 feet, no matter what you do, you look him in the eye and smile and say, welcome, good morning, good afternoon, whatever. You give them a beautiful, caring welcome. No matter
belonging. It's that belonging again.
No, it's establishing. Since they're making a decision about you in that second, they're making a positive decision about you. There you are. And I mean, the behavioral analysts tell you that. They make a decision subconsciously about you. So I have to make sure they make a positive decision about me.
So I have two questions for you on that. And I love the fact that you're referencing behavioral analysts, because I don't know if you know, but I'm a clinical psychologist by education, right? So I bring my psychology and high performance information into the workplace. So two questions. One is, what is the most favorable, positive action an employee can take to make a positive, favorable experience for the employee? And what is the biggest mistake?
1 second, you said what an employee can make for the employee?
An employee can make for the customer.
We have a technical.
Yeah, excuse me. I don't know what's going on. Let me see if I can figure out the timeline so I can have my.
Okay, now we're there.
Yeah, I want to have my team get rid of that, but I'm afraid if I click on it, it will stop.
Yeah.
All right, let's see. All right, about 36 minutes in. Okay.
No,
we'll start again. Yeah, let's start again. So I love the fact that you have the behavioral analysts on board, right, to help you understand people, human behavior, human performance. So specifically, what is the one best behavior action that an employee can take to make a favorable impression, and the reverse, the worst mistake to make?
First, the absolutely essential one is that I expressed before. When the guest comes with particularly the first time, within 10 feet of you, that you look them in the eye, that you actually not ignore them. You see, because the worst thing for people is to be ignored. And the most possible thing is to not be ignored. Let me say something about that. I recently spoke to a big hotel meeting, class hotel, and somebody spoke in front of me and said, everything is different. Forget everything we have learned in the business because everything is different, technology and all those things. When I came up afterwards and said, I want you to know nothing is different. Because
people.
2000, it's all about people. 2000 years ago, people wanted to feel good and feel respected. They still want to feel good and be respected. And in 2000 years, they still want to be respected. So we are here in the hospitality means you should show them respect and honor. And you do that better than anything if you do it immediately. As I say, in that, we started that, by the way. When we were excellent, when we were excellent in the first impression, never ever did a complaint for 100%, mind you, did a complaint follow. When we were not excellent in the first impression, always did complaints follow. Always, 100%. So for us, the most important is that first impression. The other one was simply that empathy thing. If something goes wrong, that you never say it's them or you're, but you always accept the frustration of the complainer, because 96% of the people that complain, we started all those things. All they complained about, they want to get rid of a frustration that they had. They didn't want anything. They just want to say, here's what went wrong. They wanted somebody to look at them now, please forgive me. So we taught our people, as I said, we certified them. No matter what they complain about to you, you show empathy and apologize. Not saying that is not the busboy, right. Give the example, in the book, the busboy get a complaint about TV. In that moment, busboy, you own the TV. You look at them and say, the TV didn't work, your TV didn't work, so forgive me, I'm so sorry. In that second, the complainer is embarrassed that he even complained. So knowing those things and capturing those emotional things in a human being in the subconscious, 400,000 comment cards, 400,000. Whenever, and I touched on that a second ago, the first impression was excellent. Never, ever, 100% did the complaint follow. Whenever there was one concern in the first impression, that was either sales, reservation, or front, or doorman, or front desk. When there was one thing that didn't go right, always did complain about something else. So it became most important to put the guest in that frame of mind of positive. And that happens the first impression. Now, those first impressions repeat in the hotel. So these are fascinating things. Of course, since we deal with human beings and everybody does in business, we have to understand some of the psychology around the human being. As I say, a human being wants to feel respected, not only today, always. So if that is so important in the human being, there are different styles of showing that, there are different expectations of different way of seeing that, but I have to deliver that. And I have to deliver, I have to know, ideally, great service, I know the expectation of the customer relative to my product, my customer base. What's the expectation? Now I have to create processes. And fascinating enough, the subconscious expectation, the key subconscious expectation in any customer interaction with the deliverer of any service or any product is the same in all cultures. All cultures. So much so for all our anxiety to talk about race. We are excited about talking about race in this country. It's a great subject for us. And great race. There's nothing to do. Look here, I worked in 5 continents. Has nothing had to do anything with race. Nothing. Had to do with our respecting the employee, our teaching them, our hiring the right people, period. And the guest is the same everywhere. They want to be respected. So how do I bring this together? I have to know then generally what do they want from me? As I said, what do the customers want? They want the product to be defect-free. Mm-hmm. So I have to make sure my product is defect-free. Number 2, they want timeliness. They want to wait for anything. And
especially today, yeah.
Oh, yeah, very important, very important.
Yeah.
Number 3, they want to be treated with respect. They want to be cared for. Wow. Every customer for any product in the world. Mm-hmm. Now that I know that, and what I also now know since is that customer loyalty comes more from caring, not from product on timeliness. Mm-hmm. Wow. In other words, I have to make sure that they show up, that we care. So I have to hire the right people to do that.
Right. And that's where the empathy is a part of that.
There you go. Right. And empathy is the big part of that.
Right. Right. And the other, were there 5?
3.
Okay. Now, it's so interesting.
The next step, of course, is this is general. And then there is, of course, the individual idiosyncrasies that come in.
Oh, yes. How do you deal with that? Yeah, that must be, because people can be interesting, right?
Yeah, that, of course, becomes very difficult and very difficult. And the teacher has to respond to the individual. Some of them want to slip back, and some of them want to have distance, and some of them...
Right. Some want more, some want less, some don't want to be bothered, some want to be catered to. So how do you address that?
All we could do is try to explain some of that and create, and that is the individualization of service. And that individualization, by the way, is becoming stronger and stronger. Look at and we have to understand that. Look at the millennials. If I would buy a hamburger, hypothetically, in a McDonald's, I would say I take a number 1. The millennial says, I take a number one, but I take 2 slices of tomato, no pickles, no minor. They individualize.
They want it customized, right? Because it's all about them.
Individualization becomes more and more in their style, individualization, and in product of individualization becomes more and more demand by the customer. We have to know that and respond to that. So we taught that individualization, that we have to respond individually to each customer. Listen to what they want, really, and respond. Feel how they want. All right. Well, it's individualization. We cannot, particularly today, because individualization will become more and more important. No question about it. So we know 3 key expectations, no defect, and so on. We know that, but under individualization, and we have to learn and teach our people more and more to respond to the individual. And you know, in a pretty bureaucratic teaching which we have, where some direction comes from the top office, who has no idea what's really going on with the customer. It comes to direction. Now they get a direction, they follow that direction. That's the way we do it. That's our rules. Well, no, the rule comes from the customer, not from you.
The customer's always right.
Customer, you know, that the customer sets the rules. That's why when I started Capella, I made sure we built hotels that could respond to the individual much more. So we only went up to 100 rooms.
Okay. So the size helped that. The size, the size.
So if I have 100 rooms, I would have an average check-in of about 30 a day and 30 check-out. So I can do everything. We can call them beforehand and say, what do you want when you come to Singapore? Can we do you have a diet? Do you have an allergy? Can we make any arrangements with you in Singapore? Check-in time doesn't matter whenever you want to check in. Check-out time doesn't matter whenever you want to. So we can individualize to an extent that had not been possible for a larger hotel like a Ritz Carlton and so on.
Well, even as you were describing that, I was sitting here feeling, boy, that would make me feel really special.
Sure.
Like you care, to your point, you care about what I like, I always want a couple of towels because I have to do my hair. I have to do, women, we need at least 2 towels.
Yeah.
You guys just need 1 towel, right? And when I don't have the towels, like in my profile, wherever I am, if I'm a regular, they know that. So I would imagine you have did you have a loyalty program, a VIP, or whatever?
No, I did not give points because I believe I wanted the guests to come back because of our service and product, not because of some points that we give.
I thought you were going to tell me you treated everybody like a VIP.
Well, yes, that's always somewhat exaggerated. Everybody is the same, but somebody are more the same than others. Okay. Let's be very honest about that. If you're a guest that comes for the 10th time, we make sure that we recognize that, and so on, rather than when you're there the first time, we make sure we take care of you. But frankly, if you're the president of the United States, we treat you different than if you're somebody else. I mean, it is exaggerated. Everybody's the same. That's just not true. Okay, just not true. I really don't like to say that every guest is important. Of course, every guest is important, but the guest, as a generality, establishes what one. So that's why we make customer survey, and a good company knows what the customer expects from your product.
Right. When I said that about the VIP, it's interesting. I wasn't even thinking about the free stay. I was thinking about they have my profile. They know what I like. They know what I want. And what you said is 1,000% correct, even though it's politically probably incorrect.
That's right.
Thank God we're all different. Who wants to be the same? The world would be boring. And if everybody's an engineer, who's going to be the physician? And I am a true capitalist at heart. I might get into trouble.
That's exactly.
I might get into trouble for saying that, but just like you, my parents were Very, we were lower middle class, but every place where I am today is because of the values they taught me: hard work, education, treat people with respect, do to people the way you want to be treated. It's not that complicated.
That's it.
There's a piece of tissue on the ground. You bend and you pick it up, and people are like, you didn't put that there. I'm like, so what? Somebody else's mother is going to pick it. When I stay at a hotel, like, I mean, I don't make my bed, but I don't make a mess. And people have told me in the hotel industry, it's amazing how people behave.
Yeah. I mean, it is amazing. But, this particularly the people that talk so much today about respect and so on, they're the ones that don't give it. I mean,
it's unbelievable. I agree with you.
I can witness that for you for hours.
Well, the other piece about that is, and I know as the leader that you are, I know you don't need me to say this, but, when somebody doesn't know who, you go out to dinner with somebody and you watch the way they treat the waiter, the waitress, right? Not how they treat you, because of course they're going to kiss up to you. They want to leave a good impression. But it's so obvious. It is so obvious, as someone that studies human behavior and works with humans differently than you, but my whole career, right? I watch how people interact with other, and they'll treat me a certain, like, I've been on people have asked me, are you the secretary? I'm like, no, actually, I'm the expert. And until they know that, right, as a petite blonde woman, if we're talking honestly, right, although my better days are behind me, but there was a time I was young, and you get treated differently, and then when they find out you're the expert, all of a sudden it's like, did you watch the Top Gun movies?
Yeah.
Okay. Do you remember with the first Top Gun with Tom Cruise, and the instructor for the pilots was a woman? Yes. And Tom Cruise was at the bar with her, and he was trying to impress her, and he's coming across like, the big guy. And she's just like smirking because he's treating her like someone he just wants to pick up, which is exactly what he wanted to do. And then he goes to the class, and she's the instructor, and he like wanted to die. Yeah. I mean, that was very funny, but that happens many times, and it's not really funny, because many times what you're saying about the respect, people will treat people very disrespectfully if they don't think you can give them something, as opposed to, we're all just human. We all want humanity. I don't know why that has become such a complicated concept. Growing up, I wanted to know how I have all my degrees because I felt, wow, people that have nice things, and there's nothing wrong with not having nice things, right? I mean, my parents were, I wouldn't trade them in my childhood in for the world. And we had nothing, but we had family, we had love, we had values. I wanted to know what they did. When my mother said, you get in, because my father died when we were young, you get an education. So what did I do? I got 2 master's degrees, I got a doctorate, not because, I do love learning, but to me, that was the ticket. I don't begrudge somebody. But today people seem to, like, what do you do with that when people are begrudging other people's success? I'm like, you go for it. People want what I have, but they don't want to work for it. People want what you have, but they don't want to work for it.
That is very clear. That is very clear what you just said. Go and get it. What do you complain about? Go get it. I'm obviously, I have an accent. I'm from an immigrant, but by the way, I came legally here. many years ago. But the greatest thing about America, if you say, what is America difference? And many things.
Opportunity.
Is that it's up to every individual. Where I came from at the time, much more so than today, but at the time, and today still somewhat much more than here, is which school did you go to, what family you come from, and what's your name, and so on, so on. Show me. Here, just merit. And now all of a sudden we don't want merit anymore. Now, this is the greatest gift that America gave me, is it was merit. I didn't have to prove that that I'm connected somewhere. All I had to prove is that I can do it, that I do a good job, that I care. All I had to prove, that was my success. And I got successes against most people that graduate from the best universities because I worked a little harder.
Mm-hmm.
That's all.
Mm-hmm.
Merit. And now we want to eliminate the word merit literally in our country. This is nuts.
It's nuts. Do you know? I don't know him personally, but I like to read and follow Ken Langone. His parents came here from Italy. He was one of the. I don't want to make the mistake, so I'll say he's one of the co-founders of Home Depot, and he's asked all the time, something about what do you credit your success to, and he said, my parents coming to America. Otherwise. And don't quote me, but I think he said something like, otherwise I'd be stomping grapes. Now, listen, you can hear, I am not to the manner born, right? I used to be so embarrassed from my Brooklyn, New York accent. Now I embrace it. Now I'm like, I don't care. I don't, I'll outwork you. I'll outbrain you. Like, I don't care. But when I was younger, I was very self-conscious about it. But in any other country in the world, not that there's anything wrong with this, but I would be in somebody's basement folding laundry.
Yeah.
Because I didn't have a name. I wasn't, but
I would be working somewhere. I would be working as a waiter somewhere.
Right. And I have a friend that does financial planning or something with finance and from Germany. And I know many entrepreneurs that have left Germany to come to the States because they say the opportunity is here. Not that you can't, but there's so many. It's like, Americans think that England is very common to us, is similar to us because we both speak English. They couldn't be more right.
Couldn't be more wrong.
They couldn't be more wrong.
I lived in England. I lived.
You better have the right private school accent. And don't get me wrong, it's a great country, but it is not the opportunity.
More so than anywhere. I mean, England is nothing like the United States.
I know.
I can tell you, whoever says that, you're wrong. I lived there, I know it.
Exactly. So I could talk to you all day, but I want to go back to a couple of things. This goes to being successful, right? Opportunity, the right place, be the first one in and the last one out. I agree with that 1,000%. So, however, success is not a straight line. I have failed a gazillion times more than I've ever been successful. So can you speak to our listeners now about how failure has elevated you?
Well, I'm thinking of a very specific situation immediately.
Please share.
I was relatively new in the U.S. And I worked in San Francisco for a while. My boss took a new job in Phoenix. He asked me to join him as a head waiter at the time for the restaurant, and I got into a situation where I had a fist fight.
You did?
Yeah. And at work, I got arrested. Literally got arrested.
Boy, we are really going politically incorrect. Keep going.
Yeah. I would not often admit that. In fact, I got actually arrested, and
well, thank you.
I came for a court hearing. Now, I had at least 10 witnesses who witnessed that I was attacked by that man,
mm-hmm.
who happened to be a Green Beret.
Well, you knew how to pick him.
Yeah, and I was scared to death of him. In my fear, it was all fear, believe me. I knew only when he came toward me to kick, and I had played soccer, I had a pretty good kick. I kicked him in the ribs, and he collapsed. And now, after he collapsed, I kicked him again, which was the thing. And when we were in front of the judge, he said, "Come here, boss. Who hit whom here? This is this big guy." And he went on lecturing this guy, all my witnesses, that he attacked me very much, totally lecturing him, even though he had sued me because the kick he had inside bleedings.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, it was quite serious. And then I felt big and felt, oh yeah, yes, I was right. And the judge looked at me and said, and then laid into me. And he said, and I said, what could I have done? He said, run away. And I thought, yeah, I could have run away. I could have made a better decision. I could have made a better decision. And I really agonized about that for a long time. You don't just make the decision that you want at the moment. I could have made, particularly the second kick. I didn't do that. I could have run away then because he was lying on the ground. I could have made a better decision. You see, that's the thing really. And it hit me and I come to the realization there that your destiny is not luck, is not anything. Your destiny is the decisions that you make in life. Even and that changed my life, that incident again. High decision with high intent, not just good decisions, create a good destiny. And the justice, not just decisions, create a good destiny, but it creates a destiny. It may be a bad destiny. Mm-hmm. And to sit there and agonize that and suffer on that. Yeah, I could have run away. I couldn't have not be arrested, not have been, and I'm claustrophobic. That night in jail, I thought I'm going to die. And not been in the court, not been lost my job as a consequence, not have it on my record, if I would have made a different decision. And I came to the conclusion, it's your decisions that create your destiny. Wow. And there was a decision, and then again, the decision for excellence that my Maitre D had taught me 20 years earlier. Decisions for excellence, not decisions just to do something, but a decision for excellence, for decision for right. And so that helped again to form me this terrible moment. Of course, there were many business moments and long decisions so that you learn from that. You step back and say, wow, I better learn from this. I better don't. The danger that you come into when you make the wrong decision is to justify them and make more excuses rather than saying,
I was wrong.
How could I have made a better decision here? You know, and I'm just urging all people that I work with, and always let's have a high intent for what we do. No, let's not just do it. We're human beings. We don't just function. We should have functioning with the higher thinking human beings. We don't just march the street and burn things. Is that high thinking? We're human beings. We can do that.
To go to your right, because the brain's evolved. To go to your example, when at that moment for you, and this is a great example, and I really, really, I thank you so much for sharing that, making yourself vulnerable, because everyone's really going to learn so much. I'm touched by this. But you were just human at that moment. And when I say that, what I mean is that was the amygdala, right? You were not thinking, you were just feeling.
Yeah, exactly.
Right? And so you're human.
Yeah, but aren't we doing that too much? Just reacting to it?
Sure, of course. And everything. Well, and that speaks to, which we didn't really address, but I know it's off the charts for you. We're talking about emotional intelligence, right? Yeah. Being able to manage. Everybody gets angry. Everybody gets upset. But a true leader, I believe, I'd love to know your thought on this, is not always, but many times, sometimes a leader has to show anger. I get that. But I believe a true leader is calm in the eye of the storm and knows, can they say time slows down, can create a sense of urgency without creating panic, knows what to do. And that's the leader that can quiet the amygdala, the reptilian brain, and let our logic, our prefrontal cortex work.
But the one thing I haven't learned is not to be angry. I still get angry. I've learned that. But I must say that moment of when I learned my decision is my decision. I recognize that, and I realize everything in life is decision. Everything, and I not only at work is the right decision. Why am I running this company? Where do I want to be? What's the decision? What's the decision for the employee? It's our decision. Even now, let's move that into your private life. Because of that incident, I today have a marriage that is absolutely fantastic. It happens because of that incident. I was not married with that woman at the time. However, I made a decision there. Every decision, high intent. So going into marriage, for example, and I want to just make an example that everything is a decision. I made the decision that I will be not just getting married, but that I will be in love all my life. I made a decision. So slowly then I have to work on, but my decisions, you don't just throw it out. You have to now take actions to accomplish what you decided. Now, so I take action to honor my wife, and I go and after a while go to my wife and, hey, guys, those that listen, the men that listen, there's the biggest gift can give you now. I'm going to give you a gift that is, you won't recognize it, most of you, but the one that will recognize will benefit dramatically. Sit down with your wife, and say, hey, in a good moment, mind you, and say, how can I be a better husband to you? And your wife will tell you. And then adjust yourself. So you made a decision now for a great marriage. That's all it is. It's a decision. I have a great marriage. And there's nothing more important on the end in our relationships, in our various relationships, that one relationship works well. You don't have to have that. You can have a fulfilled life without it. I'm not saying that. But once it's there, you have to make something special out of it. That has to be a decision. So what are you going to do about a decision? What guys, what are you going to do about a decision? Now, some of you smirk right now, some of you laugh, some of you say it's crazy, but one of you will do it. And guess what? You will benefit. Your whole life will be benefiting. Simple as that. My whole point is, look, your destiny is your decision. So think about the decisions that you make. And that was a decision that we make Capella the finest hotel company in the world. That was a decision. And then
the issue today, the problem today, and I love that example, and I appreciate you saying that. And it's not just for the men; the women need to hear it too, right? Because a relationship is a two-way street. But the problem today, and maybe you can address this, right? We have a choice: we can be a victim or a victor.
Yeah.
And it seems, and it seems today that people. What you were saying earlier, right, about merit and stuff. Well, I'm the victim. Then you're not responsible for your decisions because somebody else made them for you, which is never true.
You just destroyed it. And look, I mean, there's everything. It's just, I don't know why we're in a society that is making very strange decisions today, or no decision at all. Then they want to make some decision, and they want to join something that it's worthless. And so it's pretty amazing to me, and I feel bad for what people do with their lives and with society and everything. I feel bad.
Well, I think people today, my sense is people, and you see this in companies that have big bureaucracies, right? There's a big company that used to be like really high up there and then fell from grace, and I consulted and coached them, and I don't want to share who they are, but I would sit around. I know
that's it. I'm sure you don't answer this. GE. Can't continue.
And I used to sit at meetings, and it was hysterical to me. Nobody would make a decision, and I would say, "So, all right, so let's have another meeting," because nobody wanted to take responsibility for the decision. And people do that at work, and cultures that are nothing like what you're describing in companies, that runs rampant. And that happens in our personal life. So if I don't make the decision, then I'm not responsible for it. But my response is, well, who the hell's responsible for your life then? You're letting everybody else be the author of your life. It's my life. I'm going to live it, but then I have to take responsibility for the mistakes.
It comes back to, we talked about the company is a place to create profit, and a place where a lot of people, well, usually depends on size, a lot of people work. So it's all people. The biggest problem that we have is we just have not come to the realization that it's all people, that on the end, we're all human beings. For some, the company, it's just a functional unit. It's not a relationship. There has to be a relationship. That relationship is meaning the respect for each human being, if it is a customer or an employee. And that's why it can be beautiful if we have that respect. That's why it's something very special potentially. Or it's just a functional unit where you go to make money. And many employees say, well, I come here to make money. But that's not different than a wild animal looking for food. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. That's without thought, without a higher intent. That animal doesn't have a higher intent, just to feed, in order to be strong, or in order to raise young ones, in order to build a lair, and so on. And we make money in order to feed our family, in order to buy a house. So that's not enough. There's been a higher intent.
Of course, I agree with you. However, not to play devil's advocate, but just to add to the conversation, unfortunately, there are so many companies that don't have that higher intent for their employees. So I'd love to get your thought on this.
Yeah.
So well, you want people to be loyal and to be all of that good stuff, right? However, how do you feel about, companies have a bad quarter or some? I don't want to use the airlines, but like that just drives me crazy. We gave them all this money. What did they do with it? Whatever, right? But as soon as there's a downturn, the CEOs start cutting employees. And then you wonder why they're not in it with you, or they're not looking at it from the other than it's just a job, it's just a pay cut, a pay check. What's your thoughts on that?
Well, look, I'm selfish too. I want to have people that feel good working for our company, and it's selfishly too, because if they feel good, they do a better job.
Of course,
but at the same time, we have to realize, we have to come to the realization, we're not buying a computer that fulfills a function. We're hiring, bringing human beings into the organization. And I came to the conclusion, and I'm not that wonderfully human being that I'm just so much care about everybody. I do care. In fact, I think it's an honor to us in leadership, as a manager and in any kind of leadership role. It's an honor to be able to positively impact the life of many people. It's an honor. We have to get aware of it. So, and
it's a responsibility.
No question about
huge.
It.
Yeah.
And but it's higher. It's an honor too. It's a responsibility. And now I'm also selfish about it. Totally selfish about it. Because if I do that, and they feel good, and they feel right, they will do a better job, and I will have a better company. And eventually, because of it, I have more money. But if I just create that money, I will never concentrate on the money. I will never create the human being in order to make the money. But I just look at the money and doesn't really care. And so you change it, so you leave. So what do many? I go to a hotel, and I know there was this great concierge, and he's not there anymore. So I said, general manager, where is Bill? He was so good. He was really not good. He didn't show up sometimes. He was really good. Wait a minute. If he was not good, has nothing to do with Bill. Maybe he was raised wrong by his mother. But what about you? You are the one who hired him. If he was not good, you are somehow not hiring right. or you didn't orient right, or you didn't teach right, or you had a right work environment. That's why he was not good. So what did you do wrong? Mm-hmm. But we, and there is a typical thing of us as human beings, we always point to the other people.
Yeah.
Oh, I don't like it. You are wretched. You're bad. I mean, when I listen to this stuff, and it's nuts. Mm-hmm. Look at yourself. What have you done that people respect you? What have you done that people respect you? What have you done for the right work environment? And so on. And so it's not Bill. Don't ever anybody tell me it was the employee if it was wrong. We have
it's a failure of leadership. It's a failure of leadership.
That's what it is. And
it's, yeah.
And if I lead right and have the right processes, I will end up to have the right product and consequently the right money. I will end up to do that. So it's all an issue of human beings. It's all an issue of people on the end and so on.
All business, because I work with all businesses, because my forte, my strength is it's all about the relationships and the people. Doesn't matter what your business is. I have to ask you a question. I am so curious. The maitre d' at that first hotel that left such an impact. I don't know if his name was Bill. I think you referenced that as, I don't know if you just threw the name out.
Carl.
Did I'm just curious, were you or are you still in touch with Carl today? Did he see you rise? Does he know the impact he had on you?
No, because before I really started to excel, and he passed away. But before I left there. I left there when I was 17 and a half, 17 still. He said, look me in the eyes and promise me never to go to work, to always go for excellence. Promise me, do not sentence yourself to just be a functioning something. Don't sentence yourself. Promise me.
Why was he so invested in you? That's such an emotional investment.
Yeah, and I promised him, and I went on. Let me tell you that little story that should be fitting. I went on to work truly in the finest hotels in the world in Europe. I worked in the Place Ardenne in Paris, in the Savoy in London, in the Baldrige Palace in Lausanne. Truly the elite hotels in the world at the time. And then I came to the United States. I worked in the Hilton in San Francisco as a room service waiter, with the intent within 2 years to go back to Europe. And my plan was I will have to have a promotion in a hotel, meaning from room service waiter to room service supervisor, then stay another 8 months or so, and then go back to Europe and finish my career. I knew I would get that job because, look, I was by far the best waiter there. I mean, by far. No, the rest of them know how to take an order. They didn't know how to look at people. They didn't know where to stand to take an order. They didn't know how to explain the food. And I knew. I worked with the finest people in the world. And sure enough, and by the way, I knew I would get a job, the next promotion as supervisor. And because of that, and the manager of the room service was German too. So I had an in. That was very clear I would get that job. Sure enough, a few months in, the job became available. In fact, it was a big deal. The one supervisor got promoted to restaurant manager, and the manager of rooms called us all together and said, Jose gets promoted to manager in the restaurant. He did a good job. He deserves it all. Let's all applaud him, and we applaud him. And I knew now he would announce me, and he said, and the next supervisor is going to go Bill. And I knew it wasn't Bill. That hurt. That hurt. And it was devastating, nearly. The job, this was my ticket to my life, and I didn't get it. And it took me a few months and thinking about my maitre d' to admit that the other guy deserved it more. You see, I was very young at the time. I partied a lot. I had a number of girlfriends. And
you might have also thought your connection with your German manager and stuff would have held more weight. You knew everything. Yeah.
But so in the morning when I came to work, you could see from 100 yards that I was tired. And I don't, good morning. And I came a few minutes late. Oh, only a few minutes, no big deal. And when the manager asked me, well, let's do some side work over here, like folding napkins or whatever. I said, why me? Why not them? The other guy came in 5 minutes early and said, friendly, good morning, everybody.
You weren't keeping your promise to call.
Yeah.
So that was common.
Here we go. And when the manager asked the other guy to do some side work, he said, I'm happy to. When I came to that realization, after a lot of ego pain, I went back to my little room in the Tenderloin district where I lived in San Francisco. Mm-hmm. And I talked to the maitre d' who had passed away, but I talked to him. He didn't show up, but I talked with him. Mm-hmm. And I apologized. And I told him I went to work. I actually
Lesson learned.
I lost it. I forgot about it. It had no more meaning. I went to work for work. And I promised him it would never happen again. Absolutely will never happen again. And it didn't.
So that was that. So those, there's a saying, something happens for you, not to you. So not getting that promotion happened for you.
Your earlier question, when you said what happened, what the things that went wrong.
Yeah, that's
wrong.
great.
Believe me, it was a change. That was again, it changed my life. To have to admit, I absolutely didn't live up to the promises, to my own learning, to the promises that I made. I went to work. That's just to fulfill a function and get a few dollars. It's ridiculous.
That's why youth is wasted on the young.
Yeah. I looked at myself and said, what kind of a human being am I becoming here?
All right. Listen, you have been so generous with your time. You have been. I have just a couple of more questions before we wrap up. And as I said, I could talk to you forever. What is the whole question? What is the last book you reread and why?
Wow. Yeah. It's kind of totally everything unrelated.
Besides yours.
No, yeah. Actually, I don't know if you know my taxes. He wrote a book about Bonhoeffer, a religious person of the world. And the reason I read it again is I kind of fascinated.
I'm sorry, what was the title of the book?
Bonhoeffer.
Spell that for the listeners.
Yeah. Bonhoeffer, a pastor, spy, and so on. It has to do with a theologian, a German theologian, who was killed by the Nazis. Mm-hmm. But not that. I am fascinated by people who were thinking different during the time than society was thinking at that time. Look at all philosophers, they were actually thinking different than anybody else at the time. If you look at many religious figures, they were thinking different. If you look at Wilberforce, who was the first one to vote in the parliament to stop slave trade. Mm-hmm. He was the only one for several years. Every time he brought it up again, every time was the only one. He was thinking different than anybody. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Bonhoeffer, very fascinating, who was willing to talk against Hitler during the time, was finally hung because of it. Why was he thinking so different? And that's why I had to reread it, because Metaxas did an exceptional job to analyze this man, had a lot of letters from this man. I wanted to get into his mind and see where he from. That was the last book.
So why was he thinking differently? What's the answer to the question?
In this particular, and it's always a little bit different. In this particular thought, he was truly believed in the teaching of Jesus, that you have to love your neighbor as yourself. That's why he was sitting on. Mm-hmm. And he was unable to accept that Jews should be mistreated and so on. So he was unable he was just unable to accept that. He was unable to let anybody change his mind, that those values that were taught in the Bible, in this case, that those values can be against, because the value of loving your neighbor as yourself is too high, such higher value, and nobody can live up, but I have to come close to it, no matter what. And what is being done here has nothing to do with loving your neighbor, has to do nothing with but power and control and might. And he could not handle that.
And evil.
He spoke up, tried to make the church speak up, and the church didn't. But even though he was part of that church, he stuck to himself. Wow. Wow. And in fact, it was so amazing. When he was in jail finally, he wrote to his friends, "Don't worry about me. I still have a lot to do, like praying for others." Whoa.
So you like the man, you really, really respect the man, the person.
The person,
that there's no discrepancy between what they believe, what they say, and what they do.
That's right. That's right.
And that is, if you ask me, that personifies excellence wins. Excellence wins. And if you would like to connect with Horst Schulze, you can go to his website, which is his name, HorstSchulze.com, HorstSchulze.com. And to purchase his book, Excellent Wins, you can purchase that. It will be available to you anywhere where books are purchased. And for additional leadership content, you can purchase and view his information at, I want to make sure I spell this for you, archandtowerplus.com. ARCHANDTOWER+PLUS.com. And it can be licensed for a larger audience. All right. Well, thank you so much. I can't wait to go back and listen to this again and again and again. So I so appreciate having you here. Until next time, be well.